Okay, welcome to our latest demo. In this demo, I'm going to be showing a few ways to interact with Snowflake and Salesforce. So just to lay out the scenario, I'm a contracted developer. I've been asked to write a contact management tool. Since I am a contractor and the organization is security conscious, I don't have access to any of the credentials for either of the services. What the tool does is there's a web form that writes all the contact information into a Snowflake database. And then what we want is the ability to merge those contacts with our CRM, which is Salesforce in this case. I also want to be able to manually add some contacts, and I want to be able to clean them up when I'm doing the extract, transform, and load, ETL, from Snowflake to Salesforce. Now let's take a look at how this tool works, and then we'll look at how we've configured it in Aembit. Okay, so the tool is just a bash script. It's called manage contacts. And I'm going to show you a few different things. First, well, let's look at getting the contacts from Snowflake. So the contacts in Snowflake all need to have the domain cleaned up. In this case, we want to get rid of this on Microsoft, and I'll do that in the script. Now let's look at what's in Salesforce. Here in Salesforce, you'll see that there are contact information with various email addresses. And again, if I want to add one manually, I can. Let's just say Bob Barker at bob@pricesright.com. And you can see contact was created successfully. If I go ahead and run, view the prospects, you can see that Bob was added right at the bottom. And now if I want to add or do the merge, I'm going to go ahead and press 4 and it'll do the merge for me. And it's telling me that the contacts are being created successfully. So I'm going to go ahead and stop that because it's going to take a little bit of time. But if we go back and we look at our list of contacts in Salesforce, you should see that after Bob Barker, we've had a few that were added, and these have been cleaned up. The on Microsoft is gone. So the tool is working exactly as expected from a developer's perspective. Let's look at the code. Okay, there's a few important bits to look at. I'm just going to highlight one or two. So a couple things to notice is here we've put in the instance information for Salesforce. And this is going to be important because we're going to look at the Aembit policy in a second. But this injection of credentials that's being done is only for the specific instance. Anything else will be ignored. And if I go further down, let's look at the stuff for Snowflake. Here, again, you can see that I have defined Snowflake, AVU, just remember this AVU Bizzle, and then remember Aembit 4, because those are going to be the things we see in the policy. One thing to point out, as I mentioned, as a developer, I do not have access to credentials. So nowhere in the code will you find us actually getting and injecting credentials. If you look at the header here for the Snowflake call, in the header, I don't put any credentials. And if we go and we look at the curl call so here's a curl call for Salesforce. Again, here in the header, there's nothing that's needed. That's all configured in Aembit, and we'll take a look at that in a second. So as a developer, I'm just writing my code, and I'm assuming that the system will figure out how to actually authenticate these calls. Now let's go look at the policy and talk about a few things. Okay, here we're in the Aembit admin portal, and we're going to just walk through some of this configuration. So the first thing we want to look at is, how do I know that this is exactly the system that it should be making these calls? So we define, if you pay attention here, it says Globex portal. The first thing we do is, as part of the policy, and every single policy will have a lot of these same entities. Here we have the client workload. This is, in this case, we're using Kubernetes pod name suffix Globex portal, which we just saw that's what it was doing. But it doesn't just believe whatever the administrators put in. We're also doing cryptographic verification. And the way we're doing that is we're doing it by talking to the Kubernetes cluster itself. This is a cluster that's running on my computer, and it verifies that this, whatever the client workload itself says the name of the pod is, we verify with the Kubernetes cluster. So if I had incorrectly put in this name, it would fail this check, and it wouldn't let us continue accessing this policy and doing the credential injection. The other part of the access conditions, there's two other things. There's the time policy. So I have this set up for Monday through Friday during usual business hours, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. And we're also doing a geolocation check, verifying that this is an IP address that's coming from California, which is where I'm based. And then a couple other things here. One, we define the server workload. So here you can see it's the Aembit 4-dev-ed. And when we look up the Snowflake one, you can see it's the one that we had used before. But one thing I want to point out is, for SFDC, we're using OAuth 2.0 client credentials. These are short-lived tokens. These are not long-lived static API keys, even though we do support those, but we're using the most secure thing possible. Now, if we go back and we look up Snowflake, you'll see that, again, same client workload, same trust provider, same access conditions. Here's for Snowflake APIs. We have the Avubizzle that was being called in the code. And here, instead of OAuth tokens, we're using JWTs to get the token from Snowflake and inject that into the call. So you can use various types of credential providers, and none of that has to be shared with the developer, because the developer really doesn't need to know any of that. And if I go to reporting, you'll see that there are calls that came from my Kubernetes system. It identified Kubernetes. It identified server workload. We looked at the condition, the access policies. We also looked at the trust provider. It was attested that the name given by the system matches what the cluster itself expects. These are the two conditional access checks that were done. And then we retrieved the JWT and injected those as the call was being made. Very similar thing is happening when we're using SFDC. And in this case, we retrieved a Auth 2.0 token and injected that, and everything was went through successfully. So this is an example of how you can give developers access while still checking conditional access, just like you would with any other type of access, and then also using short-lived tokens and not giving any of the credentials to the developers. To learn more, please visit Aembit.io. Thank you.